Good morning, everyone, here from Finland. Excuse me. And we're on the morning schedule. I wish sometimes we could go to sleep as if we were on the morning schedule, but it doesn't always happen. Glad you're here with us. Now we're going to be, as I've observed things, we're kind of circulating around certain glamours that have to do with the political situation in the two major democracies with second-ray souls, that is, and that's the United States and the UK. And both of them have a very difficult sixth-ray problem. We meditated on this before once, I do believe, and it is the problem of partisanship, the ability to see no point but one's own and to fight for that point so vigorously that even if the whole suffers as a result, well, that's too bad, as long as the part prevails. So obviously that's not good for progress, and it tends to lead to constant contention and astral focus. In the United States, I noticed recently that the Republican group had disobeyed the standard protocol and stormed, I think that's the word they used, stormed a safe room where depositions were being taken from witnesses, and basically in a physical and crude way interrupted a governmental process lawlessly for 5 hours. Obviously, they were feeling strongly about their particular position, as if it was the only one. And, everybody's in there thinking their position is the only one, and that's why we do need that third party that the Tibetan says will be coming, and it will be, more a party for humanity as a whole, and you can see it growing out of the new group of world servers. So, right now we have lots of Mars dividing the situation between people and lots of polarization. I guess you would expect that, especially in the democracies. Let's just say that the second-ray soul of both the United Kingdom and the United States makes a fertile ground for the Christ to set up his headquarters. I believe that's the way it's been referred to. The United Nations is in one place, and the service through understanding of the law is in another place. Of course, there is the great second-ray center, Geneva. It's a first-rate city with a second-rate personality, and from the point of view of the planetary, the rays coming through a planetary center, it's the only one of 5 planetary centers which has the second ray, and in quite a pure form. So we don't know, but we suspect that these planetary centers would figure strongly in the plans of the Christ, which can still be a century away. It's not for us to determine when this shall be, but I'm excuse me, I'm pretty sure that 2025, though an important date, is too eager an anticipation. There's so much that the hierarchy has to do first in terms of establishing itself within the planetary centers before it becomes possible for the Christ himself to go through the process of reappearance. We may have to wait till we're even closer to the actual change of ages from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. Meanwhile, here we are, assisting as best we can, and probably, given that there are 80 years more approximately in this century, that many of us will continue this work in our, as they say, reincarnated aspects. Or DK had said, well, we're writing this now for the reincarnated aspects of yourselves. So they are planning far ahead, much farther ahead than we can. And we are simply participants in bringing the divine plan into a level where it can be seen and appreciated by more, and maybe desirably instituted. Let's have a little alignment. So wherever we may be, we find it is not the sensory data that is important, but the consciousness which begins to fuse and to merge and to blend. And impressions upon that growing group consciousness travel fast, and what comes to one ideally will be available to all. I'd like to welcome you then this morning, when there's a reasonable number of people. I can do that. Like for a full moon, it's not possible, but hi and good morning, Alex and Anna and Annette and Antoinette and Ariel, Barbara, Catherine, Chris, Frederick, morning, George, Ishtar, Karen and Catherine, Kim, Leslie and Margot, Mariana, Mariut, Martha, Natney, Rebecca, Risto, Suzanne, Vera, Vicky, and Zenaidi. And over here, Joe and I are, well, let's see, Joe especially trying to keep me honest and actually recording something here. Now, you know about recordings, they are available on Makara. Three W's, a point, and then Makara, Makara, Makara.us. So if you miss programs and you would like to pick them up, then our colleague B.L. Allison is pretty quick in putting up the converted program, so you have plenty to listen to if you want to. And there's also, we're working now again at getting some of these programs up on YouTube, where even maybe a wider audience is available, people who are not familiar with the Bailey work. But I think, if you get into the Bailey work, which some of you deeply are already, you may find that occasion arises for you to share an understanding of what this work is. And this work is sanctioned by the hierarchy, and it's under the approval of Master K.H., of course, the Christ, and even Sanat Kumara he has determined what can be released into the public consciousness. So often DK is saying, well, I'm not permitted to say more. You know, he uses the word permitted, so we realize that he is consulting a much higher authority in this case. But it's very solid material, and it reflects the factual nature of the inner process. So do take advantage of it, and especially with another about 5.5 years, a little more, to work in the closing years of the era of the forerunner from 1965 to 2025, a 60-year period. Okay, friends. Now we're going to go to our reading. All I have to do is find it here. Yeah, we're on our 133rd program, and this is in terms of reading through the book. This is our 73rd reading. We've looked at a couple of questions so far. He says, consider the following questions. You know, you would find it of value if you do. What is the method whereby ideas are developed from the moment of impressing the mind of some intuitive? And basically, I think what we find is the white magical process. You know, you can read a whole book on that, and I think some of you have read that wonderful book. You know, he says it's on the control of the astral body. Basically, a treatise on white magic is a manual for each disciple to have in hand and to consult. We can't possibly know everything in that book, but he says the academic study of it will prepare you well in the future when I can give you the actual magical formula. So one of the questions, how can we develop ideas once the soul impresses those ideas upon us, or maybe something higher? The soul does have an intuitive content, absolutely, but the origin is still higher and comes into that causal area, which we call the soul. So especially, you know, in the sacrifice petals and when considering the synthesis petals, intuition is active, at least the initial stages of it. Then the second question, what glamours do you feel are particularly dominant in the world today, and why is that so? Well, I think we can, you know, see that these glamours of personality, of partisanship, of manipulation, of simply covering and lying and doing everything you can, legal or illegal, for a partisan cause, these are rife today. Also, of course, the glamour of the fear of death and the great glamour of materialism, which keeps us riveted on the lower aspect of our own nature. So that is, Latuya, I'm going to move you over here to the other side. Okay. There are many glamours, individual and broadly speaking, but humanity is still very much divided and thinking of itself in personal ways. Now we come to pretty much the work for today. Number 3, I have spoken often of the work which this group, now the group being considered there was the group of 9 people who were selected, often on the basis of the fact that they had a powerful 6th ray, which would attune them with the astral plane, and they could work with greater facility as a result of that. I have spoken often of the work which this group and certain other groups are intending to do in dissipating world glamour. You know, it's a great thickness of substance which is not plan intended, and which prevents the perception of reality, or at least of something more real than is presently the case. I mean, basically, people are running around in a state of in which great unreality is imposed upon their consciousness, and they don't know the difference, and it takes a long time to wake up and say, you mean I was involved in all that for life after life, pursuing goals which had no real value and which misled me and misled the others that I was trying to contact? I mean, just think of the religious field, for instance. My gosh, the kinds of things that people tend to believe are outrageous in terms of the ageless wisdom, and, you know, in a way, Christ never said those things. But people, they believe the forgeries and the adaptations that have been made according to the personal bias and tendency of those who are in charge of the writing the scriptures and distributing the scriptures and making decisions about what was heresy and what was legitimate doctrine. And it often had nothing to do with what really transpired or what the Christ was suggesting. So do you have any ideas, it says, as to how this should be done, or what will be demanded of you? And in this book, of course, he's going to give us these processes, and we have already for a number of years been working with them. So let's go on and see what he has to say here. And, you know, by the way, do take notes, and if you want to discuss something, then at least you'll have a registration of what it is. So how do we really go about, you know, dissipating individual and also world glamour? And he gives us 3 different quite powerful meditations to do this, one of which we have been working, the technique of light. That's what we've been working with. Okay, well, now we're at a new section, and it says the contrasts between the higher and the lower glamours. Let's think together and think this through and see how we respond. In the preceding part of this section, we considered briefly and all too cursorily, you know, just superficially, basically, he's saying, some of the causes of the dense glamour which surrounds humanity. Well, not a very pretty picture, even though for most people it's not detectable. And, you know, I have mentioned before that both the Tibetan and Alice Bailey have what is called a horror of glamour. That's the picturesque word that the Tibetan used when responding to their attitude. And I suppose, obviously, until we can see it, that kind of horror does not develop in our consciousness. Now, we go on that this glamour is very ancient. Note this, powerfully organized, and is the dominant characteristic of the astral plane, emerged clearly, as did the fact of the 3 major predisposing subsidiary causes. Now, I think in Lemurian times, what I gather from the Tibetan, these were times when the consciousness was focused in a physical etheric manner, principally, and not in an astral manner at all. Glamour was not a problem, but it was aided and abetted later by the Black Lodge, who saw in it the opportunity to enslave humanity. So it is a condition of our planetary logos to a certain extent. Our planetary logos, we're told, has a personality problem and is not yet an initiate of the second degree, cosmically considered, and is in that period between the first degree and the second degree when so much glamour is confronted. So what are these major predisposing subsidiary causes? One, the glamour induced by the planetary life inherent in substance itself, which, I want to say, has a materialistic tendency or bias. We have to remember that we've inherited a lot from the moon chain, and as far as this particular planet goes, it seems to be the repository of a great deal of previous solar system tendency. The previous solar system, very mental and material, and so much of the glamour that we have is caused by materialistic fixation upon our personality as if it were the most real aspect of our nature. So, it's a big cause here. The glamour is induced by the planetary life and inherent in substance itself. This prevents our sight. That's why we use the technique of light in order to render visible that which is hidden behind the concealing veils. Then another subsidiary cause, predisposing, the glamour which was initiated by humanity as a whole and intensified throughout an aeonial past, and this is, see if I can get this correct, basically, no, I'm not getting it correct, but it will be here. Basically, at the beginning of the Atlantean period, and aggravated with the incoming of the moon chain monads and the members of the Black Lodge, never trying to miss a chance to become dominant and to enslave the race. I guess, you'd wonder why that has to happen, but there's a freedom. We're operating here in our solar system very much under the Syrian law of freedom, which makes it impossible for the workers in the light, the masters and so forth, to impose the good. They could do it, and says the Tibetan, humanity would learn nothing as a result and would revert back to earlier conditions. So that's this is what's going on in the beginning of the Atlantean period. What are early Atlantean days? He uses a figure somewhere about 12 million years ago. Just think how long a century seems to us, or 2 or 3 or 4 centuries, and now we're talking 12 million years ago. So we have such an ancient past, relatively. Of course, we look at those huge figures and they seem huge, but compared to other figures, they are small. Okay. And then something here called the glamour engendered by the individual himself, either in the past through participation in world glamour or started in this life. It's not a pleasant thought, is it, that we could start a inhibitory glamour rolling in this particular life, maybe more so in the old days when we were less mentally focused. I'm not saying we're yet mentally polarized. The polarization, as you know, occurs midway, approximately, between the second and third initiation, and I think there were very few of the Tibetan students who had achieved even that particular point. So, either through the past or started in this life. And of course, somewhere in here he talks about the lodge of form, the brothers of darkness, involved in perpetuating an old theme. And that old theme was simply materialism, or what we would be considering to be materialism these days. All right, materialism is such think about it, this is a big glamour. It's such a superficial way of looking at the testimony of life. Basically, what you're saying is that what the 5 lower senses report to your consciousness is the only reality. And out of such assumptions comes the further assumption that every subtle state of consciousness, and occasionally we have, connection with these as in dreams or inner thoughts or whatever. I think everybody probably experiences these, that these inner states of consciousness are caused by matter. Now that's just a reversal of everything that the occultist really thinks. And I don't know if you've ever had a conversation with a person who is quite determined that his whole thought life is an artifact of matter, but it can be a very stubborn and difficult conversation, because basically you're trying to turn preconceptions on their head, and these things are not easily relinquished. Okay. Now, so we have 3 things: the condition of the planet, the condition of humanity, and the condition of the individual. Let's just see. And my numbering is just getting out of whack here, and I'm sorry about it. Now let's see if I can do anything about it. I kind of doubt it at the moment. All right, so I'll just say this is number 3, and yeah, it's not correct. I mean, this is correct now, but it will revert. Now, are we prone to glamour? Yes. Okay, so to all of these 3, induced by the planet, the race of humanity, and the individual, all of us are subject. Well, you can go pretty far with glamour. I mean, some glamours seem to at least elevate you beyond the crudest type of materialism. The glamour itself is not true, but at least it is elevating. And then later you can refine it. and see where the error is. There are many people who have been strictly materialistic, and then they run to some kind of exalted system of teaching which seems to raise them up to constant spiritual acknowledgement or thought. That's an improvement, even though they go off and make many errors. Errors, fifth ray, Ajna Center, Venus, errors are not corrected overnight. So to all of these three, every human being is prone. And this is not a pretty picture here. And for many lives, proves himself the helpless victim of that which he later discovers to be erroneous, false, and deceiving. Well, let's hope that that moment of later has come around for us, and so that we will not perpetuate our glamours and arrive at nothing real as a result. He learns then that he need not fall supinely, under the domination of the past, astral, emotional, and glamorous, but that he is adequately equipped to handle it, that he but know it, and that there are methods and techniques whereby he can emerge the conqueror of illusion, the dissipator of glamour, and the master of Maya. Well, he's such a good teacher, and he gives you these memorable little phrases: the conqueror of Maya, the dissipator of glamour, and the master of Maya, conqueror of illusion. Usually what we say is that illusion is dispelled, glamour is dissipated, Maya is dispersed, so that a more organized way of living can come into expression. So anyway, this is the initial revelation. And it is when he has realized the implication of this and has set out to dominate the undesirable condition that he arrives later at a recognition of an essential duality. Well, there are pairs of opposites that we're talking about, and maybe the sign Libra is one of the signs which emphasizes this. Also, Gemini does, and Virgo does. You really can't escape it. There is a higher and a lower self, and it's not easy to come en rapport with this higher self unless we begin to wake up and realize that it does exist. So his essential duality, and maybe all of us are now living somewhere in the later parts of the second circle of petals that we call the love petals, and are making that transition as aspirants and disciples into the third circle of petals, where increasing reality is really forced upon us. I guess what we have to do is evaluate the degree to which what we see and think about is real or is filled with glamorous, illusory, myopic errors. So anyway, he sets out to dominate the undesirable condition, because at last he recognizes it and runs right into his essential duality which eventually becomes, what should we say, the solar angel, or the angel of the presence, and the dweller on the threshold of revelation and initiation. So this is, for the time being, in no case illusion. This essential duality, we're not into illusion yet. He discovers the relationship between himself as a personality, or as the soul in incarnation within the personality, because, in a way, we are not really the personality. We are an extension of the soul within those elemental vehicles we call personality vehicles. So this is not an illusion. What happens here when he sets out to dominate the errors in which he is immersed? He discovers the relationship between himself as a personality, the true dweller on the threshold, and the angel of the presence guarding the door of initiation. Is it from him because he's liable to disrupt the inner business that has to go on? Well, that's partially true, but usually it's a safeguard for the individual himself, so that he does not become overcome by the inner energies which are to him overwhelming, and it could, reduce a lot of his progress, so that he'd have to do it all over again. So he discovers, he discovers the relationship between himself as a personality, the true dweller on the threshold, and the angel of the presence guarding the door of initiation. This angel of the presence, in a way, well, what is it? It's a kind of a combination of the inner man and the support of the solar angel, but in a way, it's an extension of the monad. That's one way to think about it. So this marks a critical moment in the life of the disciple, for it indicates the moment wherein he can begin to tread the path of initiation, if he so desires. Now notice the qualifier here, and possesses the required fortitude. I guess what we have to get in mind is that not everybody treads the path of initiation. It's a rigorous thing. It's undertaken on the basis of one's own free will. It offers many hardships and challenges and special exertions of the energy of the individual. And a lot of people just kind of, instead of doing that, they slowly rise with the mass of other human beings, and thus their consciousness increases, but through no specialized, targeted effort. Now, I think Master DK is teaching a lot of people who will choose the path of initiation and do so, in a very deliberate manner. And, you can question yourself, have you thus chosen, or you're still trying to make up your mind whether all of this technical occult approach is of value? It's always easy to revert back to an old system that gave comfort in certain ways. So, decisions are in the air, basically. Okay. The angel of the presence. This marks the critical moment, a critical moment in the life of the disciple, for it indicates the moment wherein he can begin to tread the path of initiation if he so desires and possesses the required fortitude. Maybe we don't have such a good idea of the degree of fortitude required, but if climbing a physical mountain is a demanding process and may take from you everything you've got, how much more is it the case when climbing the metaphysical mountain of initiation? So in the last analysis, the partial subjugation of glamour and escape from the thraldom, the slavery, right, of illusion, are indications to the watching hierarchy that the man is ready for the process of initiation. In other words, he will enter the hall of wisdom. His major work will be among the sacrifice petals of the egoic lotus. He's out of the hall of learning, and he's on his way to becoming a true student of spirituality, and he's on his way, well, let's just say, to really stepping within the blue circle. There are other maps like this, and some show a red circle, which is the circle of Shambhala, but the blue circle, we definitely hope to live our lives within that blue circle. And if we are treading the path, we kind of recognize the path in and under the sign Libra, then we're within the blue circle. And even those who are not yet initiates of the first degree can see themselves to an extent, certain extent, within the blue circle. It's just a very big change of life, okay? Very big. And basically, after millions of years, 21 million years on this planet, and like I say, a lot of us might have even more because we were individualized in other places, other planets, other solar systems. We've been at this for many millions of years. So anyway, this is DK talking about the partial, at least, overcoming of glamour and illusion until he is no longer completely deceived, until he is somewhat mentally free. It is not possible for him to face the waiting angel and pass through the door. Now, these days there's so much going on politically that is of a antique and retrogressive nature that we may forget that that's all that certain people can understand because they just haven't had a sufficient number of lives, or they have not made the best of those lives in a timely manner. So there are many, many people that are very much deceived at this time and are responding to the importunities of a demagogue who is speaking right there to the worst conditions and fears of their solar plexus and even sacral center. Because there are, says the Tibetan, certain ancient desires hidden in the sacral center. Well, anyway, are we ready then to step in to the third tier of petals? Can we now step into the development of the third tier of petals? Now that goes quite fast, considering how long it has been to evolve. Millions of years of evolution. And now, in a relatively few thousand years, you pass through those the developments in those petals. One thing I would here point out to you, he says, after passing through the door of initiation, the disciple returns. Let's see, where are we here? Each time, again, to take up anew his tasks in the three world of activity. This idea of continuity. We have a new incarnation coming up, okay? And we take up the direction in which we were moving, hopefully a little wiser. If we've been to Devachan, we've cultivated certain qualities, and if we've returned very immediately, we should be at that stage when we can just recognize this is what I'm doing and take it up. Now, and also I want to say, too, that DK says when you die and you are found in the different levels of the astral plane and maybe eventually the mental plane, you pretty much resume the kinds of activities in which you were involved on the outer plane during your incarnation. So there is continuity here, rather than, okay, everything is like totally different and you get your white robe and you play your harp, Harp is a great instrument, but maybe harp lessons, maybe harp teachers are in particular demand in heaven. Such is the distortion and the limitation of what we have been given to understand. Okay. After passing through the door of initiation, he returns to the task, renews his task, takes up again his task in the world of activity. And he reenacts former processes briefly and with understanding. This is called, you know what this is called? This is called a recapitulation. And, you sort of pass through periods where, let's say, you've taken the first initiation and you rapidly experience the kinds of experience you had when you took it, or whatever initiation it may be. After which, he proceeds to master the essentials of the next initiatory lesson. So it's just a constant moving across the burning ground and through different doors which indicate in you the possession of the necessary qualities. I am here, he says, putting a great deal of information in a very condensed form, but that's all that's possible now at this time. All right. So that should be enough. And I'm going to go back here to this so that I can stay oriented. I know that there probably are better ways but these are my notes, such as they are, and, when I'm working entirely by myself, the notes might be even quite a bit more elaborate. So today is the 25th, and end of is that correct? 133? Or are we on 132, Joe?
You're correct. 133.
Okay, and then we're beginning 135, and we come to the 32nd of October. Well, not really, It's the 1st of November. By the way, I wonder if you've noticed that we have gone into Scorpio. The sun has moved into Scorpio, and I wonder if you have noticed the change in energy, or whether it meant anything to you. Have you noticed? Okay, so, and this is 01 of November 19. Okay. And it will be an evening presentation. And we're on good old page whatever. We're on page
127, I think.
Yeah, right. We have 126 right before that. We're right there. We're just racing along here at about 2 pages per session, but that's okay. That's okay. All right, so that's where we'll be next time on the 1st of November. And I hope you're appreciating, as I am, the opportunity to read carefully and meticulously through this book, which was the manual for instruction for a particular group of 9 students whose task it was to be to confront world glamour. But then, as I have said, the Second World War came along. The situation was so dire. The threat that humanity might go down entirely was entertained by the masters, and there was no way to exactly sustain the types of service organized by them before the implications of the war became so problematic. Okay. Now, okay, friends, maybe you've taken some notes, maybe you have some questions, and or
Yeah,
some.
Karen has her hand up.
Okay, thank you, Joe. All I've got to do is there we go. Okay, so Karen, go ahead.
Yes, Michael, earlier you mentioned the era of the Forerunner from 1965 to 2025 is 60 years. I know that the conclaves are every 100 years, but in these books, time periods are so vast that it's quite shocking to me that the era of the Forerunner is 60 years. And so why 60 years and why these 60 years?
Yeah, well, I don't think I can answer that. When it comes to race cycles, the 6th race cycle is 15 years, 150, 1500. You'll notice that it totals to 6. So the 1 and the 5 together. So it probably has something to do with the orientation of the astral body towards a very high desire that the soul and the Christ of humanity appear. John the Baptist, he was a Pisces Gemini, I'm pretty sure. DK says he was taking the second initiation, which is maybe why he spent so much time in water, And it's pretty clear, too, that Pisces, a water sign, where he's self-abnegating and looking forward to the coming of the Christ. He says he's not even worthy to, I forget it was, tie his shoe, or it wasn't exactly that, but that was the idea. So he had a lot of self-abasement. And it's obvious that as the voice crying in the wilderness, you get a good 6th ray type there, and they're the ones that are going to go out in the wilderness and preach to the locusts, And that's, in other words, he did all of those 6th ray sacrificial kinds of things. So we now are considered to be, wait a second, there's some heavy noise going on there. Be careful what you move around, or whoever is moving stuff around. We are the group John the Baptist, and or should we say the new group of world servers, not limiting it to us, of course, are the group John the Baptist, and we are powerfully conditioned by the 6th ray, spreading the good news, waking people up, showing them a different vision. And I think that the 60 years is related to the 6th ray cycle. It's sort of sort of 4 times the 15. Is that it? Yeah, 4 times the 15, which is usually associated with the 6-ray cycle, and which sums to 6. So now here's another thing. Right in the year 1966, there's our sixes again, the Christ assumed the vestures of the Buddha. And there were a huge number of awakenings in consciousness from the late 60s. One hears about it, Maybe one experienced it. So that whole 6-ray phenomena that we call the hippie movement, the consciousness movement, all of that was part of the reorientation of the 6th ray. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that the Christ started a whole new measure of effectiveness by assuming the vestures of the Buddha. What were these vestures? Were they simply the emotional, mental, and physical nature? Etheric? No. They were triadal. These vestures were triadal, and the Buddha had left them for the use of the Christ. If he left them for the use of the Christ, it means that he, the Buddha, has to be focused monadically in Shambhala, which we understand to be the case. So there are certain things that suggest that the number 6, the activities of the Christ, the 60 years before the Great Conclave in 2025, that has to have figured into it, a period of preparation, reorienting the astral body of humanity. All of those things, I think, contributed as to the why now, and of what nature, what ray nature it was. 6th ray.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, let's see what we got here. Okay, that's good. Right. Okay, good. Now, other thoughts or questions on all of this? We see glamour's rather inescapable, and that it's been with us a long time, millions of years, since elsewhere it tells us early Atlantean days. We see that it's been made more complex by the intervention of, at least I've told you that, elsewhere it talks about it, those intelligent material initiates who are ruled in a way by the number 3. They're probably 3rd-ray monads, and they come in during an astral period, the Atlantean time, and they introduce the complexities of the number 3. They confuse people, they bewilder people, they disorient people, and therefore man is blocked in terms of knowing his path. He loses the track. Now we have lost the track in many ways, and humanity knows practically nothing about the ageless wisdom which would provide an exit for the human race out of this bewilderment. But that's our job. A lot of us are on the 2nd ray here, one way or another, and a great clarity is supposed to be brought by the 2nd ray, and it's our job to present this hidden vision, which really makes sense, is clarifying, dissipating, and altogether introducing man to a higher level of reality. Now let's see here. I see.
Vera's hand is up, and Anna has a question.
Okay. So
Comment.
the 6 forces of nature and is synthesizing all force, symbolized by the hexagon, formed of 6 triangles, whose apices converge to a point. Thus, the symbol of universal creation. These forces of universal creation are also depicted in the... And here's where I never can see it, Joe. I lose
I'm
it.
going to copy and paste it into the comment or into the chat for everyone, because it is difficult to read these
Mm-hmm.
in the question box.
The last line, I always use the last line. Well, it seems to be an archetypal arrangement, Anna, in our particular universe. And when you look at any plane, basically, you can, let's just say you were going to look at the following. We would say that all of these six surround the major seventh plane, which is the Sea of Fire. So somehow at the very center of six effluxes, we might say, is the all-synthesizing seventh force. Now, the Christ and the Buddha, they are on this level of the synthesizing seventh. We are nowhere near that. Very few among us, I wonder if any, have a complete causal consciousness. That would indicate the actual fourth initiation. So, you know, we're down here working on a kind of a reflection of what the great teachers are doing when they're mastering the six and seven. The six is called sometimes the cube of space, and it represents the three axes of three dimensions and the way you can go forth from the 0 point, you see. And, you know, but at the very center of those three directions or six directions, you know, forward and backward from the 0 point, is the synthesizing seventh factor, in a way, the irrational factor in astrology. When you divide by 7, you get something like an aspect of 51 degrees and X number of minutes, and it's always rather indeterminate, and it indicates something that is much more inclusive and somehow less concrete than the other six. So the six are derived from the one indeed. Now let's see, you're in the chat box here. Joe, are you? Thus, the symbol of the universe creation, these forces, the flower of life. Yeah, and there's a man who did a lot of work on that, isn't it? His name was Drumvalo. Obviously, he has a strong seventh ray talking about the flowers. Well, all of us, we are the sevenfold plant. We're the Saptaparna, the sevenfold plant, interestingly, and we have 7 major principles. There is a difference between the Atma and the Atman. The Atman, we really could not call it a principle. The Atman is the very essence of being within us. The Atma is the spiritual will, which is derivative from that being. So does it belong in the center or not? Okay. And these forces of nature that you're talking about here, they can be elevated onto the higher planes, things that are far beyond the comprehension of even our highest masters still conform to this sevenfold nature. Here is the next series of planes, and once again, we're going to find the 6 surrounding the 7. Now, I've often thought a universe disappears, and within absolute infinitude, it is possible to derive all kinds of algorithms and archetypes for a universe, just the way certain mathematicians say, okay, yeah, that is Euclidean geometry, but now we're going to deal with Boolean geometry in terms of the man who wrote the laws of thought. George Boole was his name, an Irish mathematician and logician, and Einstein was very keen to study that, and so were others. Completely different rules. And so you begin to wonder, when other universes appear, do they always have this sixness and oneness, this sevenness? And, I think the verdict on that is still out. I suspect there are other ways to arrange the factors and the elements of a universe. Now, every one of us, I'll just conclude by saying this. Every one of us is, on the cosmic physical plane, a flower of life. First, we have to become the completely unfolded flower that we call the egoic lotus. And that will indicate readiness for the fourth initiation. And this is an attempt to depict a condition of unfoldment which exactly precedes the fourth initiation. But we're not done by any means once we do that, because there are other and further unfoldments. And I want to say that in our nature as a monad, we are also a flower of life. And although it's not really depicted on this level, we have to unfold the temple of Ezekiel. Now, basically, what I'm getting at is that every temple, which has to be destroyed, of course, every temple is a flower. And we are the Sapta Parna, the seven-leaved plant with seven principles. And unfoldment is the metaphor we use to determine or to indicate our growth on various planes. Then when we completely offer a unfolded flower, it is ready to be destroyed and essentialized. And what happens here is the egoic lotus is destroyed, and its essence says are not lifted straight to the monad yet, but they are lifted into the permanent atoms of the spiritual triad, which then send it, after who knows how long, to the monad, and this will be yet another 12-fold flower of life with the fiery, volatile essence at the very heart of it. So there are many metaphors, and they are useful in understanding what we must do. Now, let's see, a little more here. I know Vera is there, but as long as I'm here.
There's just a comment you might want to add. Anna's is in the same stream, and then Vera is on to talk, and Kim has a question.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, okay. Well, right. The blended six and even. This is brought by the fusion of the polar opposites, indeed. So, and finally, we basically get one thing: we get Christ and his ashram. That's what we get. Master Moria tells us that the dodecahedron is an invincible figure. And, he's unusual for choosing an even figure. Usually an odd number is chosen, and the master in the center of it all indicates the even number. Okay. But in this case, it's the dodecahedron, the 12 of any heart, the 12 of any ashram, with the master in the center. And somehow that central point, the Christ, is the synthesizing point for all the 12. There are many types of numerical offerings, and always there's going to be some essential synthesizing point at the very center or heart of it all. In astrology, I've worked out a system building upon the Tibetan system. Let's see, I wonder if I can, what can I do? Let's see, hold on. This will do it, I think. Good old Scorpio. All right, so here, here we have, this is the, what's going on here in Finland at the moment. Not only is the Sun in Scorpio, but Scorpio's rising, and the Venus and Mercury are all in Scorpio. But here at the Sun sign, we have the personality. At the Moon sign, we have the personality vehicles. At the rising sign, we have an indication as to the soul. And if the rising sign is followed in the right way, it leads right to the heart of that state of consciousness we call the soul. The thing that's new here, and I believe it merits some consideration, is that at the seventh house cusp, we have the spiritual triad, which is in a way the sword for which the rising sign is the scabbard. And opposing the Sun, we have in the Earth sign position, Earth being essentially a first-rate planet in terms of the monad, we do have the indication of the monad for those who can respond to it. So basically, we have about 5 different points here which indicate different levels of the constitution of man: the moon, the vehicles, the sun, the personality, the rising sign, the soul in the causal body, or at least a way into it, the seventh house cusp, the spiritual triad, the point opposite the sun we have as the monad. But remember, not everybody can respond to that yet. Now, Kim has some stuff here. Is the traditional stage of enlightenment the third initiation? Yes. That's how I understand it, Kim. That Satori, enlightenment, transfiguration, they're all the same. And they, illumination, they mean the coming into consciousness of the recognition of a really unified field. Do the books discuss the dodecahedron? Master Moria in Agni Yoga mentions it. The Tibetan does not discuss the dodecahedron, but he does say in what the Christ did in ancient Palestine, you have the indication of how an ashram really works. So there's the 1 and the 12, and also we have as well the 1 and the 9. That's yet another way of configuring how the Tibetan worked. Do we know that we have passed stage 1 or not? And what I'll do is go to my AAB extracts and hope for the best. Huh? Okay, so I'm going to say first initiation. And somewhere here, among all these wonderful references, is the one I'm looking for. Here we go. Not in the astral body. Okay, here we go. Requirements. So you always have to measure yourself for, if you're definitely in touch with the master, which very few are. Like he said, some of you have definite contact with me. Some of you have contact with me and you don't know it. Some of you have to cultivate contact with me. So that was by far the greatest group. So here is some defining characteristics of the first and second initiation. And, you have to measure yourself. And by the way, this does tell us that the new group of world servers in its upper brackets is a pretty high group. Members of the new group of world servers should watch with care, none of the supervising, for all those who show signs of having passed through the birth experience, and should help them move towards a greater maturity. And that's basically what we're all trying to do. Every teacher is trying to help the students who may not have been at it as long as the teacher to move towards greater spiritual maturity. Now, here's the first one, Kim. They should assume that all those who truly, watch that word truly love their fellow men, who are interested in the esoteric teaching, or I might say some significant spiritual teaching, and who seek to discipline themselves in order to attain greater beauty of life, are initiate and have undergone the first initiation. Those are the 3 requirements there, and there are other requirements scattered throughout the books. You may find on Makara, I did some videos, 4, 5, 6 videos on the first initiation. And in there, you'll get an idea just the way if you consult the videos on the second initiation. I covered the first, second, and third initiations, but have by no means included all of the relevant references. Now, when they, meaning the members of the new group of world servers, who are basically in a higher position, discover those who are seeking mental polarization, remember when that occurs between the second and the third initiation, and who evidence a desire and aspiration to think and to know, coupled with the distinguishing marks of those who have taken the first. So basically we're just adding on here the orientation towards the mind and the thinking and knowing and all that. We're adding that on to the first degree requirements. Then they can, in all probability, safely assume that such people have taken the second initiation or are on the verge, and that verge doesn't just have to be one life, it can be a few, of so doing. And then he says a bit more here. All true aspirants have taken the first initiation. This fact is indicated in their 1. Intensive struggle to grow into the spiritual life, to follow the way of determined orientation to the things of the Spirit, and to live by the light of the Spirit. I believe that many who read my words will recognize these determinations as the basic motivation of their lives. So then, Kim, you can extract that, or maybe, I don't know, maybe I should just put those in, huh? They're very important somehow. And if I put these here, and then I send them to everybody, then you should get it. Unless I've done it wrong, Joe, and you can tell me. Yeah, those are the references, or at least 2 good ones, which tell you about how do you know where you stand. Well, until the Master tells you, and the real Master, and then there may be a reticence on his part to tell you, you just don't know for sure. But you may have a very good idea based upon the requirements that lie ahead. Now, you might say that maybe a lot of us are not so different from the disciples who gathered around the Tibetan or he gathered them, and who were working with him to be on the periphery of his ashram. And all but one of them had taken the first initiation. All but one. And there were some 50 something. So that gives you an idea about where a lot of people stand. Okay, hope that is useful to you. And then Vera, go ahead.
No, I changed my mind. So thank you.
See, I have to strike while the iron is hot, get you in that brave moment or whatever. What was your subject matter?
My usual thing, frustration with the hearing that Great Britain is supposed to be that wonderful nation bringing now the right government and a legal system. Well, what's happening now is far from it.
Yep.
Julian Assange, etc. So,
well, here's the problem. Every country also has a personality. And they have a ray of a personality and a rising sign of a personality. And right now, says the Tibetan in the Destiny of the Nations, that the nations are living far more according to their personality than they are living according to their soul. So, just take a look at us as individuals, and somebody's, taking notes about how we think and behave and all the rest of it. And the note taker might find a lot of personal expression in what we do, and might find that we are quite far from the promise that our soul ray and soul astrological sign indicates. So it's a battle, it's a battle all the way to the fourth initiation, and I feel even that beyond that point there are going to be battles. If you read that very sort of first ray little book called The Light of the Soul, it's a first ray 6th ray book, and it has to do, Master Hilarion apparently wrote it, so the former St. Paul apparently wrote that book. It is filled with struggle all the way until very high places. And he says that even near the end, the disciple who has achieved much might fall back. So, okay, let's just see.
Yeah.
Let's just see.
Thank you.
Michael.
Yes, Tuija. Yes.
Michael and Vera, thank you for all of always these very honest statements and questions, Vera. But I wanted to just point for us that we will not take our eyes from the times that we are living. When we think that it is really only these few years left of the time of the Forerunner, what does it mean, this kind of time, is that during these moments, like it was the John the Baptist, he was supposed to prepare the way. So now when this dharma and responsibility is on disciples, so we have to do something during this time. And when we see these countries, like we see these horrors happening in Great Britain, in United States, from the perspective of the soul, we see that, okay, it is so that this must come. Somehow this will come. And what do we do in these moments? Now we have the festival week, and DK tells about that time that when we have those 7-year rhythmic impulses, comes beyond even Capricorn constellation, that there is some greater thing which is rhythmically returning to Earth or in the orbit of the Earth, that we can use these energies, and only the disciples and the group of new group of servers can use these energies in the way that this group can distribute the energies lower. And now we are in 1 month away, approximately, a little bit more, when this impulse is again. And then when we look what is the states of in Great Britain, the states in United Nations, I mean in America, United of Nations of America. So all of these are somehow showing us that these energies are so strong and battling against the new direction of humanity. And we are just like on the threshold of that it is so possible to happen. But before that, all of these unconscious and unknown energies has to be, or they are known, but they are unconsciously known. Energies has to rise because of the Pluto is now in Capricorn. And all of these 6 planets will be in Capricorn. And this alignment is between those, it is Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter, Pluto. What were the other planets which are involved during that time? And then we have the new moon during the festival week. So very strong energies, and so very energies which can change so much if we now can stand attuned. So that's why we are sending very soon with Michael something about that coming week, and we have very strong program going on. Every day is practiced silence around the world. So if you have not got yet those letters, so try to start to prepare that time, and let us really stand as a mass intent in the group of new group of observers and workers of light, so that these energies can now do, and these forces, which are forces of Christ, can work behind the scenes. Because so much is on the stake, so much is on the scales at the moment. But this time has to have come. But no one knows always, as it is said, that the evil must come, the darkness must come. So everything is according to that, what is the law. But how we are working is now the big question for us, that we will stand united.
Excellent. Yeah, very, very important. So thank you, Tuya. And Alex, you have been evoked, and there you go.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes,
Hi.
good. You're good.
Tuya, thank you for those inspiring words. Yes, we'll unite. I do have a question, however, in view of that as well. Looking at the long arc of history, okay, and I have a question about leadership and how a few leaders affect the masses and the world. So we remember the good leaders who had a good effect. But if you look through history, there's been a lot of bad decisions made by a few people. And of course, I'm reflecting on this because of this is reflected in this situation in Britain at the moment, because it is so absolutely clear these are literally just a handful of people, unelected people, making a decision for the masses who are going to be affected. And I was reading this article by a Guardian journalist, very excellent, and he refers to catastrophic men and women who've changed the world for the worst. Yeah. And he refers to an Australian Psychological Society study that saw that a study of 260 senior professionals in the US, which found 21% had clinically significant levels of psychopathic traits, compared to 1 in 100 in the general population. And I have been thinking all this time, this is the darkest moment before dawn. But if you look back over history, And I can remember when I was teaching history in Australia, and I came across the whole story of Gallipoli and saw that film, how that affected me. That it kind of encapsulates, what's happening now, what's happened in the past. You can go back to the Roman Empire. A few people make a decision and everyone else goes over the top or over the cliff. And this interesting study talks about how people at the top of business, and of course we probably all know in our workplaces, it only takes one selfish, catastrophic man or woman who, it says here, they are impervious to the suffering they cause. And I've just been reflecting on this, that this is actually not just now in the uprunning to 2025, but it's always been so. And now in the United States and in the UK, people are feeling this, screaming and shouting to have some effect, to have some voice, and yet they're frustrated because a few people are making decisions for the many. And those few are catastrophic, what this article calls catastrophic men and women with psychological disturbances and a desire to fulfill their personal agenda. So if you look through history, that's pretty common. Also, might mention a film I've just seen recently, Official Secrets, which is about the Iraq War. So we only have to look back 15 years, and now we know the truth. We know the truth about those few men. In fact, I was just looking at a picture of, it was Tony Blair and Kissinger and, the people getting together who were instrumental in deciding to go against, not wait for the United Nations decision, and take the world into this mess, Iraq, even though there were so many people protesting all over the world. So my question is, what's going on? What is
Alex,
that? What is that?
Can I say a few words? Alex,
Yeah.
that is exactly the problem, because we have to first look and have a very huge expand of vision, that we look only these few hundred years, and this is too short to understand what's going on. It is this horrible thing.
It's thousands of years.
Yes, thousands of years. But this looking that we have to go so far, because it is within that matter. This matter that everything is built is still from the earlier solar system, which has a program to go towards matter, towards the material expression, which is the old way in earlier system. This is the new way, what has not happened yet.
Right.
There where it is happening is in the disciples. If we really learn now this, how we will stand in the light, that it is our inner reality. We can have a personal flaws, and we have them, but what is our inner, this persistent, standing, unwavering, completely focused, how it was. It is a little bit like sixth ray, but if we think that Christ was the one who was the first one who was inaugurating the era of love, and he was the first one who was able to really inaugurate also the will of God. So it needs only one person. And we are those ones in our own nations, that we understand now as the Christ. He says that even greater things you will do. And now that is one moment for us to do these greater things, that we will do, not put our eyes to look these, which brings us down, and takes the hope away. No, we are now standing in that so far, so long. Well, if there will come terrorists and cut our heads to the last second, we have to keep the thread open, because that is the thing which will affect in our unconscious levels of etheric field. We never know how far this ripple within our heart, which is strong and standing in the light and will not give up to these forces, no matter what happens. So we never know how far this ripple will travel on our planet, that there will be one child somewhere in the jungle, and that someone will make a whole change in some 20, 30 years. We never know, but we have the responsibility that this line of Christ will not cut. And there it is. We cannot understand how all of this is happening, because we see that we try to pray, we try to call. The change is not immediate, but it is so so mysterious way. What is the Makara? Makara, the mystery of personality, because it can't be turned, but it needs energy, a new type of energy to turn it. And that is what we must do. This is our job.
Yeah.
And of course, as personalities, we work in the world as well, but this is our job to really, really understand that we do rhythmically our invocations, we are available all the time, no matter what time it is. That part we have to do.
Yeah. Tuya, I so appreciate that. That is so, inspiring. That's indeed, what we have to do. And what the reason I spoke this was because sometimes we think, people get very upset and despairing because they think, oh, it's now, we've lived in peaceful times and this is so shocking to us. But my point is that if you go back, not just hundreds of years, not just to Gallipoli, you go back to BC, it's always been like this. And it's always been like this. So in a way, the perspective helps, is encouraging. On the other hand, it's also, saddening that it's always been like this. The few.
But then we have to compare what has happened to the masses. And we can see that the masses can read now. Masses are somehow recognized. We have horrible situations here and there, but we have internet, so the world is connected. So there are also so many things
positives,
which has been advancing. And I always somehow, maybe because I have been a slave in my some incarnations, whatever it is, but I have my heart with people who are not recognized. Because if these people lose their heart, even though they are childish, and however we would look, but the heart of the attitude, what I remember during the wartime, I was born then, the war was over, but I remember in the spirit in the nation.
Yeah.
Because we were very childish and we were very, in one sense, uncivilized, and now the Finnish system is one of those which is studied in the world. So that is telling me from how low situations one can take a huge leap in very few years. The same thing is that one can take also the leap backwards. So that's why let us just have this strong connection in our hearts and in our minds, and we will stand and find all of those ways how we are strengthening each other in this cooperation and the attitude of love, so that this front is not breaking for the Christ, because this front is now.
It's keeping the vision, isn't it? It's keeping the vision.
That's right.
And as you say, putting this in perspective, the positives that are happening that didn't happen before, just that quote that Michael put up. I was just reading, I got the book out, Externalization of Hierarchy, and it goes on to say, you know, it says all of this, it's so wonderful to hear DK say just what I was saying, which is in the history of the world, it's been built around war. And then it goes on and says, for our encouragement, let us recognize that the same humanity which has brought about these terrible conditions can also create the new world, the new order, and the new way of life. And the selfish, wicked past can give way to a future. But I just thought it was really useful to, you know, put it in the perspective of history. It's not just now. It's not just, you know, since
Well, yeah.
Donald Trump was elected.
Okay.
This is a long picture.
This is a solar systemic issue. There is a very great resistance against the first ray in our particular solar system. And the disciples of Shambhala are poorly understood, and not too many of them are allowed in because we wouldn't be able to stand it. And the ones who are allowed in don't quite know what they're doing yet because the second ray nature of our solar system does not reinforce it. So they make a lot of mistakes in the beginning, and every one of these people that you see here, Akbar, Genghis Khan, the pharaohs, Alexander, Caesar, Charlemagne, William the Conqueror, Napoleon, Hitler, Mussolini, I don't know about Hitler and some of those really bad ones, but they have to make the turn. And when they make the turn, and especially show their nature in the next solar system, we will see this. The one who travels on a line upon his way back to the center of the life, he goes. He returns his way, and there he waits. He reaches out his arms and cries, I cannot stand and walk alone. And standing thus, a cross is formed, and on that cross he takes his place with others. And then so it talks about the change of being and the change of heart. And these conquerors who interrupted so much and stopped so much progress will be responsible for lifting humanity onto an entirely different and higher level than anyone else could once they become reoriented. But it's a question of timing in this second ray solar system. And remember, we are on a first ray planet, and the planet doesn't know how to use the first ray yet because it's still non-sacred. So there are some very deep issues of a historical, astronomical, solar systemic nature behind the history we're talking about. Now, look, friends, this has all been very good, and I'm glad of it. We have to move on right away to our meditation. So that's what we're going to do. And let's see here. Just want to take a look at what. Who is there? Who is there? Who wants to speak?
Yeah, Alex.
Alex, yes. Yes, one more thing, Alex. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a positive thing following, just to conclude with that as to you said, for example, you know, in a way, we can see the positive results. There were 2 million people on the streets, 6 million signed a referendum, signed a petition about the referendum. So we can see this light, you know, rising up. And even though those people aren't in power to make the decisions, it's happening. That was my first observation. My second one is this is a bit for us. It seems to me to be, this is for us to go through. As Chuya said, that we're purified, that we maintain the courage, you know, and that we maintain the vision. Because I wrote that meditation about staying in the lifeboat and steadying the lifeboat. But sometimes, you know, I myself am jumping out of that lifeboat, you know, wobbling it or leaping out and running away. So it's so interesting to watch the process as we stand
Well,
firm. Thank you very much for letting me
huge
say that.
transitional time, you know what I mean? And we have to kind of know where our planet is relative to certain very powerful types, some of whom are supported by the um, form-oriented initiates of the previous solar system. So it's not only their own power, but they are obsessed, they are overshadowed, and their strength is given far more focus than otherwise it would. So anyway, we must.
Michael, I cannot hold my tongue. I just want to say to everybody, DK says, and in Egypt there was a saying that look always into horizon. And it means for all of us also that when we look what is happening, I know this when how it is, how the depression and looking how painful everything is. But then let us just put our directive into the energy of the Christ, into the energy, the vibrations of the nearing hierarchy. Then you get strength. Then you are hooked into that what is the future for humanity, even though it is hurting to look.
We will persist in this, and we will eventually prevail. There's just a couple of things that have not. Here's from Catherine. This movie, Jojo Rabbit, addresses the current ideology in a positive way, and can be a great way to see such things through. And then Kim was talking about, those years around 28 when Saturn does its thing. We're really on our own after that time, and the continuation of the last life is pretty well concluded, and a whole new individual phase takes over. It can be quite a crisis. Now, the time is racing on. So let us have our meditation, and then we'll hopefully be done more or less within the 2-hour range. And with thanks to everybody who has contributed verbally and in written form to these thoughts. No question, but we're in the middle of what's been called by the Tibetan the tendency of the lords of form or the dark forces to fight unto the last ditch. And we're going to see the forces of selfishness rise up very strongly, stronger than they have even, and that will evoke from us a corresponding strength which hopefully will be sufficient to overcome it. Now, this work is partisanship, and boy, do we see a lot of that. You know, when I start to see things getting physical in the capital of the United States, where 30 people are breaking into a room, we really are somehow following a lower way, and we're getting desperate to get our desires fulfilled. And some of those desires are good for the nation and for the world, and others are totally retrogressive. So let's just have a little silence again. And then we will use the protective formula and the lighted cross that involves the eyes. We'll trace lines of light with this cross, and we do it individually, and then the whole group is at the same time building a protective cross. As a soul, I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light. I work, and from that point, I never move. And visualize the greater cross before the entire group as it will be descending in consciousness into the astral plane to do this work with against distortion, really. We'll bring the three lights together, etheric physical rising to the mental plane, and stimulating and sustaining, and the light of the lower mind with its logic and its reasoning and its problem-solving ability. There are two lights merged now. And we reach towards the light of the soul. At least, apparently we can locate this above the head. At least that's a good way to visualize this. And this light of the soul, we bring it down. We recognize soul light. It has a different feel to it than the other two lights. Bring it down and merge it with the other two lights of mind and of matter. Three lights are now one, and from it our searchlight can go forth, detecting glamour and dissipating glamour. And we say together, the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. The intuitive light is looming ahead, and it's called the light of day. Now, we will use the formula and our creative imagination visualizing this great searchlight that we have created. It's turning its light on the astral plane. It finds the glamour, and it helps to dissipate the glamour. Radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth. The inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. And so we turn our searchlight onto the subtle plane. It's not subjective, it's subtle. There's a difference. And we search out this glamour of partisanship. You know, it's just an inability to have holistic vision, and we invest all of our emotion and aspiration into the parts, and we fight to the death for it, even though if we won, the whole would be compromised. So let's put spiritual will into our beams so that it becomes really a powerful instrument for dissipation, and we will say, with power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. So together we wield an instrument of detection, we wield an instrument of dissipation. Now think about this glamour of partisanship. It's everywhere today. Nation against nation, party against party. The word part gives you the hint. It's like we're afraid of inclusiveness, afraid to round out the bigger picture. And it has to do with our rays and our astrology and our experience and how well we've done over the many millions of years of taking advantage of the opportunities offered. What has this partisanship caused within humanity over the many years? What has it caused on this, in this kingdom which is ruled by the number 4 and which has a lot of Mars in it and 6th ray from the planet? And we pretty well don't care very much what happens to the other side, as long as our side prevails. When everyone in the human race has a little bit of the divine will, which left unexpressed would compromise the whole. So we have to recognize that even though we may not have immediate sympathy due to ray quality and zodiacal quality with the opposite side, it's part of the wholeness. And has its function. Now, let's use these words of power with our visualizations as we go, and we'll see the light, our searchlight, penetrating the glamour of partisanship, living for the part rather than the whole, seeing only the part rather than the whole, and weakening this glamour, finally dissipating this glamour. Just think how much the internet and the global television network and all that, what it's meant for us. And then there are these wonderful people. We have such a man here in, he's, I don't know, he's of Arab extraction, but he lives here in Finland, and he visits all of these countries and people and groups with such a understanding and synthetic understanding and inducing for all of us the sense of wholeness, so we just know how the other people are living. Last night, he seemed to be in the Far East, talking to the people who had no other place to live but a cemetery, a whole community of people living perforce in a cemetery through such great poverty they were going through. So, inclusive vision. Here we go. That's our goal, to dissipate the glamour of partisanship and develop holistic vision. The power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of partisanship. The power of our united light negates the quality of the glamour of partisanship from affecting humanity. The power of our united light destroys the life behind this glamour of partisanship. You know, if we're going to follow the golden rule, we have to be able to put our consciousness in the place of the other person. And if we're always simply fighting them because they're different, then holistic vision is never going to be ours. So now what we do, we spend our 5 minutes looking at this, penetrating the glamour with our searchlight, producing its weakening and its dissipation. 5 minutes. And this work proceeds, and behind all the partisanship and narrowness and combat for the part rather than the whole is the sense of an appreciation of wholeness. Everybody has a point of view, and in most cases, that point of view is worth understanding. Yes, there are some definite enemies of humanity within the human race, but that's very rare. Usually it's just a question of psychological rehabilitation, and then we can begin to think in terms of the whole, of humanity. And this works out on the individual level as we listen to others, try to understand their point of view, nation to nation, ray to ray. Holism will prevail, and not this distortion of a hyper-fervid, hyper-heated partisanship which distorts the whole, and that which is intended for the whole. So we withdraw our beam and the triple lights from which it extends return to their proper place, the light of matter, of mind, and of soul, and we keep our light in reserve for the next occasion. Meanwhile, working on the glamours that we may detect in our own individual nature, we can use a similar method. He will give us that method, and but basically it's the technique of light. So now we will sound the Om 3 times in the belief that we have affected the astral plane, affected the tendency towards kamamanas, helped to reduce the tendency towards supporting illusions, and consecrated our material energies to support that which is of value for the whole, and not just selfishly for the part. So from the mind to the matter, we sound the Om. So friends, let us always think in terms of the whole. The sun of wholeness. When the clouds disperse, we find the sun behind them. It's symbolical, but the sun of whatever quality must take the place of these distortions will shine. Will shine if we do our work in the right way. Well, tonight we'll be continuing. It's another webinar, and for the time being, until we find a better way, it's going to take place at 11 o'clock our time and 8 p.m. GMT, and it's on Cosmic Fire. We can keep going on Cosmic Fire for 25, 30 years. We probably won't be doing that. But for the next 5 years anyway, and that's how long these Cosmic Fire classes were for the University of the Seven Rays and the Moria Federation, we can concentrate very strongly on that great seminal book, sending forth so many books from what was originally mentioned. So let's see, I'm wondering, do we have the link there, Joe? The Cosmic Fire link?
I apologize. I didn't get it up and ready.
Wait a second. I think we're going to be okay here. I think we're going to be okay. It's just, I mean, I think so. Let's just see. This is an edit, and I'd like to give you the link. And by the way, yeah, I don't think my link is not up on the YouTube either. So, just to save you here it is. And it is right here. So invite your attendees. If you want to come, you can come and join us, and I'll just send this to everyone. And there's the link, and send. So you should be able to cut and paste that. And well, we're going slowly, and all these things. We're not rushing ahead. And right now, we're dealing with the 3 cosmic logoi. We have dealt somewhat with the absolute, and now the creators of the universe, and the principles of the secret doctrine, the 3 fundamentals of the secret doctrine, and also, Francis has been covering this through the secret doctrine, and also, I think, through the Manly Hall book. So you'll at least understand the fundamentals, and then we'll get into the fires of matter, which are the first maybe 100 pages, and then into the fires of solar fire and the soul, and then finally into the fire of spirit. So thank you for your attendance, and all of us on the team here, Tuya and Olivia and Joe and BL and Michael, and we try to bring it to you on these webinars and broadcasts. So we'll keep doing that as long as we can, and many blessings, lots of love from all of us. And maybe you see some of you tonight if you're brave, right? If you're brave to get into Cosmic Fire. Bye for now.